So there's another term that along with this we hear, which is the happy child syndrome. So what do you have to say about that?
So an ideal student in my mind needs to be hardworking, sincere, should not have a sense of entitlement. Now, if a child who is currently able to jump 4 feet and you suddenly give the child 4 feet 10 inches, the child will give up. A child who can jump 4 feet, you give the child 3 feet 6 inches, the child will lose interest. So, for example, I'm completely against unmonitored internet access to very young children. So, peer group has a very, very important influence on how a child looks at the world. How we use technology determines whether it's a boon or a bane. I think technology interface, too much technology interface to students at a very young age needs to be checked. While the help of technology to develop high quality content, I don't think, a lot of homework is given. As a nursery, LKG, HKG, there is no homework. So if you ask me about a child in grade 8 or 9, I'll probably know the child for the last 7-8 years and I would exactly know how the child has evolved, how the family is like, how the parents are like.
Pranam everyone. Welcome to this engaging session where we'll be diving into the world of education. Today we have the director of Tueller Group of Schools, Mr. Amit Kapoor. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Sir, so let's start. If you could tell us a bit more about your background and the journey that led to the establishment of Tueller High School.
So, ma'am, I grew up in Ajmer. I come from a fairly humble background. But despite the humble background, my parents always focused on one thing, and which was our academics. So school was clearly the most important thing in our house. Thanks to their focus, I was able to go to a good college. Then I went to IIM Bangalore. I was a DML there. Consequently, went to good companies, McKinsey, Matrix Partners. I also went to LBS in between. In all this while, one thing which was very clear to me was the reason we could achieve a little bit, whatever we could, was primarily because of the fact that we were good in academics and we focus a lot on education. As I've said multiple times, I believe education is the biggest leveler in the world, right? It does open opportunities for you despite your caste, creed, background, etc. And also, on the other hand, I have been a teacher since I was in grade 10, As I said, we were not financially strong. So I have been kind of providing tuitions. I remember my first tuition were to my neighbors. And then, even when in college, I did odd jobs, provided tuitions. When I was preparing for some of my competitive examinations, again, I used to work in a coaching center. So, importance of education with the passion for teaching. I think these two things combined for me to really take a deep dive into education, and Tueller really happened.
Sure. So, sir, since you mentioned that education has been so important, we would like to explore your perspective on various factors that shape an education institution. Say, for example, the pedagogy, the curriculum, the teaching staff. So, a lot of people talk about ideal schools, but we would want to know who is an ideal kid for Tueller High School.
So an ideal student in my mind needs to be hardworking, sincere, should not have a sense of entitlement, and should be focused towards a few goals in life, right? I know, sometimes they do sound like words which you'll typically use for grown-ups. But what I've realized is that, there are a lot of characteristics, a lot of habits which you set very early on. And, if a child is groomed in a certain manner, then the child stays that way, right? So probably traditional, but yeah, this is how I want an ideal Tueller to be.
Okay. Since you mentioned the traditional word, I think I'll relate my other question to it. So generally people are familiar with the traditional teaching methods. Can you share some innovative and non-traditional teaching approaches that you found especially engaging for the students?
Yeah. To answer your question, very simply, I think we are very traditional in our approach. We have dabbled with multiple researches, multiple pedagogies, and we do believe that, what we have been as a country, as an education system, what we have been doing for last many decades, it turned out fine, right? Today, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of senior CEOs, researchers that you see around in US, Europe, right, who have gone out of this Indian education system, they're doing amazingly well. So we definitely have done something right in our education system. So although we have adopted a lot to new age thought and theories, but we are more traditional in our approach, not as modernistic as many others.
Okay. So then what about technology? It is now an integral part of everyday life. So in your view, how is technology transforming classroom learning and boosting our student engagement?
As you just said, technology is all pervasive these days, right? So you can't take technology out of our lives. But how we use technology determines whether it's a boon or a bane. I think technology interface, too much technology interface to students at a very young age needs to be checked. While the help of technology to develop high quality content, to support pedagogical methods, to enable research, to support teachers, I think all these things are really, really helpful. Technology today can help a teacher sitting in Jhunjhunu, Ganganagar, Guwahati. I mean, Guwahati is a big city. Tinsukia, right? Keonjhar, deliver as well as someone in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, etc. So I think technology is a big enabler. But how do we use it as far as students are concerned is extremely, extremely critical, right? So, for example, I'm completely against unmonitored internet access to very young children. But I'm completely in favor of doing a lot of research, on helping children how to understand difficult concepts well, right? So it depends. I'm not against technology, but as I said, in a school environment, technology has to be used very judiciously. Another part, I think for very young children, at least till the age of 13, 14, you can't replace a teacher at least for a few decades, right? A teacher is extremely critical in the offline education system and would remain so, again, as I said, at least for a few more decades, unless technology really, really advances and, AI and robotics maybe reach a different level. But you can't replace a teacher at least for a few decades.
Right, sir. So now, like you said, we've talked about classroom learning. We've also spoken about technology. When a child goes back home, it's the parents that the child is surrounded with. So how crucial do you think peer-to-peer learning is? And how does it impact students' grasp of concepts?
Very, very important question. So, ma'am, see, how do we look at the world, right? We look at the world through a concept set which exists in our mind, right? And in our mind, there are multiple priorities which are stacked, right? So this is more important, this is less important, this is lesser important, this is not important at all, so on and so forth, right? Now, in that map of things, a child starts placing every information or every new person he or she meets, right? And then evaluates what to do with it, right? So let me simplify it further. We pick up our priorities from the environment, right? So we pick up our priorities. The child picks up his or her priorities from his or her father, mother, parents, relatives, teachers, and as the child starts growing up, from the peer group. So, for example, if there's a peer group which prioritizes, for example, how much money the person's family has, then the child will evaluate things very differently. If there's another peer group for whom position of family, right, the car that the family drives is way more important than the peer, or that the child will have a different priority set in his or her mind. In another school, maybe it is the child's academic achievements, sports achievements, they'll be more important. And in another peer group, it could be, who's more helping in nature, who is more humble, who follows school's rules, who is more, who has better manners, etc., etc., right? So what happens is, depending on the environment, priorities are set differently for different peer groups. And those peer groups can then influence the child significantly in how he or she looks at the world. So peer group has a very, very important influence on how a child looks at the world.
So, sir, you've spoken about classrooms, teachers, technology. So, what about peer group?
A child sets up priorities in his or her mind after accepting cues from the environment, right? And what does the environment comprise of? Environment comprises of parents, teachers, and peer group. So, just to give you a sense, let's say there's a peer group which idolizes cricket superstars. Trust me, that entire group then, will start focusing a lot on cricket. There's another group which, for example, focuses on who's rich, whose parents are more powerful, right? Who can bring more money to the school. And that will that will become the judgment criteria for that particular group, right? Let's say there's another group which can prioritize academic achievements, humility, hard work, helpfulness, gratitude, right? And suddenly you'll see that the priorities for this group will be very different from the priorities of the other two groups. And once those priority orders are set, the child looks at the world as per that priority order. That's why peer group is extremely, extremely critical. And setting priorities is paramount to directing a child or nudging a child in a particular direction.
Sir, as you mentioned, environment sets or say influence to set a child's priorities. What kind of environment do you establish at Yola to set these priorities?
As I just mentioned, the few qualities that we look for in a student, I think what we do is we celebrate those qualities a lot. And we also celebrate the role models for those qualities. Human beings have a innate tendency of establishing a social hierarchy. So whatever environment you may put a group of people in, they will come up with some kind of a social hierarchy. So what we have done is we have pushed that social hierarchy, from our side, right? So, for example, the kids who help others, kids who, have very good behavior and value systems, kids who perform very well in academics, kids who perform very well in sports, right? Or have some exceptional achievements, right? Those kids are automatically celebrated a lot. So they become the role models for the others. Now, when a young child is looking at an older child and seeing what kind of qualities are being celebrated in the school, then that child becomes his or her role model. And if you can provide such role models to the children, then these qualities automatically flourish. And that's how we reset the priorities in a child's mind. So, if a child sees that, someone who gets an NMDC rank 1 or rank 2, gets to cut a cake in an assembly, the child wants to be there the next year. Right? If, the principal ma'am or coordinators or teachers praise a child who has a very good behavior and value system, who helps others, the other child would also want to be like that. Right? So, see, by proactive participation, we can kind of create an environment which prioritizes those things that we would ideally want to see in a child. And that really, really helps. So, for example, we don't want children to get money in school, right? Because we don't want children to base their social hierarchy on the basis of money which a child brings to the table or on the basis of the money which the family has. So, we do not have a canteen in our school, right? So, these are the things that we keep on doing.
So, we've spoken about the environment of a child. Now, let's come to the environment inside the class. So I think we can talk about the curriculum. So curriculum is one of the core, building blocks of any school. How does Tuola High School, prepare its curriculum for the students for future academic and professional challenges?
There are two core parts to our curricular philosophy, right? The first is we try to customize as much as possible. Think about it. Why do students study in different classes? What is the purpose? Why was it this process even started? That, students of a particular age group will go to grade 1 and then grade 2 and then grade 3, so on and so forth. Why do you think this happened?
Probably, there's some age that we think is the right age to get a certain kind of information, or maybe, that's how the brain's function for a child.
So there's a lot of research behind improving the efficiency of classroom teaching or improving the efficiency of education. And, it is conclusively proven that the more homogeneous a group is, the more effective classroom teaching will be. Right?
Right.
So what happens is, we believe, or at least there's a very accepted norm that kids of similar age group will have similar learning capabilities, will be more homogeneous in nature, and hence they are grouped in a particular class and they are taught certain things. We are trying to take it a step further, right? And see, there is nothing good or bad about it, isn't it?
Right.
Customization is as per the need of the child. If a child can jump 4 feet 2 inches, you give the child 4 feet 6 inches, right? If the child can jump 4 feet 10 inches, you give the child 5 feet.
Right.
If the child can jump 3 feet 6 inches, you give the child 3 feet 8 inches, right? So you give the child the same difficulty, which is a little bit of a stretch for the child. Not too easy, but not too difficult either. Now, if a child who is currently able to jump 4 feet and you suddenly give the child 4 feet 10 inches, the child will give up.
Yes.
A child who can jump 4 feet, you give the child 3 feet 6 inches, the child will lose interest.
Right.
So customizing education is extremely critical. So our first core philosophy in this regard is customizing education.
Right.
There is second, which is aligning to the comparative requirements of the country. Let's be really honest. One of the key deliverables, we believe at least, right, of a school is to make sure that the child goes to a good college. After grade 12, your child is supposed to go and join a good college. Pick up any good college in this country. The only way you can reach a good college in this country is by clearing a competitive examination. Now, most of the times, the syllabus or the approach required to clear that competitive exam may be different than the syllabus required to clear a board examination, right?
Right.
So obviously board is a must. You need to prepare as a school. We need to prepare a child for board examination. But is that enough? So what we're doing is there are two core philosophies. As I said, one is customizing according to the child. If a child can jump 4 feet 2 inch, I give him 4 feet 4, right? Just enough to push him a little bit more, right? And obviously we are aligning the board requirements with the competitive requirements. And, preparing a curriculum which addresses both these needs.
Like you mentioned that, you provide individualized attention to kids. So every student has unique needs, So how do your teachers provide this individualized attention to students who may be struggling or require extra support?
So in many of our sections, we provide 2 additional teachers, right? So technically, in a 30 student class, we are expected to provide 1 teacher. There are multiple sections in Teola in grade 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 where sometimes there are 3 teachers for those 30 to 32 students just to make sure that the child gets that individualized attention. Now, obviously, customization and individualization cannot be at 1-to-1 level. It does happen sometimes when a child has a doubt or needs some extra classes. But, 3 teachers in a 35 student, 32 student classroom is good enough customization that we try to provide to a child.
So we've spoken about the children who need extra support. What about those students who aspire to pursue prestigious exams like, JEE, NEET or IPMAT? How does a school support these students in preparing for such competitive exams?
One of the biggest fears that I had, when I started Teola was, the trend that we saw kids leaving good schools in grade 11. And it was a very scary thought that, you work so hard with a child and you get attached to a child, right? You work, especially if you're passionate, if you're emotional, you tend to get attached to the child. And then suddenly the child leaves you and goes and joins another coaching institute. Because obviously career is equally important, right? You need to clear a competitive examination to be able to go to a good college. To avoid that, we very consciously started a competitive curriculum in our school, right? So it's our school teachers, and it is not like partnership with some coaching center, etc. No, our school teachers cater to all needs of the students. They prepare them for board examinations, they prepare them for competitive examinations, right? Whether it's JEE, whether it's NEET, whether it's IP MAT, undergrad business management, right? Law. We believe all needs of the child should be catered to by one education institution, and that is the school. That's why the parents send the child to the school. And we really try to make sure that our kids get the best possible education on all fronts.
Right. So since you said that, students are preparing for the board exams and then they're also preparing for competitive exams, so how does Tuola High School balance the preparation for both without compromising on the quality?
We extend the hours a little bit. See, think about it, right? If I have 100 chapters to teach versus I have 150 chapters to teach, there is no magic wand. I can't do magic, right? If it takes 2 hours to finish a chapter, it takes 2 hours to finish a chapter. If I have to give 5 questions as homework, I'll have to give 5 questions as homework, right? So if my total syllabus, which is focused on board examinations, is let's say 50 chapters, and then there are another 30 chapters that I need to cover in order for my child to be able to compete in different competitive examinations, I will need to finish the entire chapters. So we obviously try to make the process a bit more efficient, but there are some extended hours which are required beyond the school hours, right? But it's not like, you're studying in a school and evening you're going to a coaching center. Rather than the school running for 5.5 hours in one go, we run the school for 7 hours in one go. The child comes at 8 in the morning and goes at 3, and we make sure everything is addressed, everything that I've just spoken about in those 7 hours.
So, now the child has studied for 7 hours in the school. The child will eventually go home. Now there comes the word, homework. So, what's your stance on the term homework, and how much, homework should be assigned, or how can it be structured to maximize learning without, overwhelming the students?
So I think very young age, I don't think, a lot of homework is given. As a nursery, LKG, HKG, there's no homework or hardly any homework. So there is, but really hardly any homework, right? So it's more a bit of practice, right? So you have written alphabet A, you need to write that alphabet A 5, 7 times, 10 times, right? As you move on to grade 1, 2, 3, a little bit of homework is expected, a little bit of revision is expected so that, the child can prepare for the class tests, etc. I think homework really starts becoming meaningful from grade 5 or 6 onwards, where we do expect the child to put in that extra bit, right? To make sure that he or she is revising the concepts which have been taught in school, right? Homework is a kind of a revision. So you have taught the child, let's say, 10 kinds of mathematics questions, and you ask the child to practice 20 more at home, right? You have taught the chapter of, maybe social sciences, and, you expect the child to write 4 questions at home. So it is a very good way to supplement the classroom learning. But again, so we have made homework a demon. It is not really a demon. It's just a supplementary tool to ensure that the learning becomes a little more effective. And as I just said, for very young classes, grade 1, 2, 3, 30 to 40 minutes a day is more than enough. For maybe 4 and 5, maybe 60 minutes a day. Maybe grade 6 onwards, depending on, how ambitious you are and how focused you are in academics, maybe 70, 80 minutes a day, maybe 1 hour, 15 minutes a day. And, obviously a little high if you're preparing for a JEE or a NEET. So, yeah, when you're preparing for a JEE, NEET in grade 10, 11, and 12, then it could be 2.5, 3, 4 hours, right, depending on what you're preparing for.
So you've spoken about the curriculum at Tuola. Do you incorporate feedback from students and parents? And how do you keep pace with educational trends and social shifts?
So we're very agile, right? We take feedback very quickly and very seriously, right? Since we started, we have been in touch with parents. Parents do give us feedback, multiple kinds of feedback. So, for example, when we started, we were told that our focus on sports was a little low. In the last 4 years, we have these big grounds. We have today we have football, we have basketball, we have tennis, we have volleyball, we have table tennis, we have cricket, right? You name it. I think other than swimming, we have most of the sports in here, and fantastic team of coaches, and our kids are doing amazingly well, right? Also on music, dance, etc., we have moved a few notches. So we take feedback very, very seriously. I still remember, we did not have competitive examinations for medical line, and we had already started preparation for JEE. And a couple of parents reached out to us and said, you've already done it for JEE. We did not have any students then for NEET, but only 2 parents came forth and said, why don't you do it? We trust Teola and we want you to start something in NEET. And we started. And lo and behold, first batch, there were only 7 students to start with. Finally, it became 10. But we taught full NEET syllabus to 10 students, right? And that was just basis feedback. Parents came to us, said we should do it, and we did it. Right? So we are very agile in that sense. We take feedback very seriously, right? But yeah, see, feedback has to be aligned to core philosophy. Now, if someone comes to me and says, बहुत pressure है बच्चों पे, आप pressure कम कर दीजिए. See, core philosophies cannot change. I'm clear about one thing. I cannot be everything for everyone, right? We have prioritized 2 things. We have prioritized discipline and value system. We are very strong at that. And we have prioritized academics. ये 2 चीज़ हमने बड़ी clearly prioritize कर ली हैं. It's not that we are not good in sports, we are not good in dramatics or performance arts. I think we are providing a very good platform to students there. But हमारी priorities बड़ी clear है. Right? अब someone comes and tells me कि नहीं आप homework देना बंद कर दो, आप exam क्यों करवाते हो, right? Those are feedback which is tough to accept, but any feedback which is completely in sync with what we believe in, I think is really very readily accepted and implemented.
So there are some parents who feel that, Teola High School's extracurricular offerings could be more expansive. So what do you want to say to those people?
We take feedback, right? I just told you. So over the last 7 years, we've really expanded there, right? When we started, we hardly had, we had one small playground. And today we have like 5 big grounds. We have 2-3 basketball courts, 2 tennis courts, right? So we have taken that feedback. We do believe in sports, and our objective is over the next 2-3 years, we will be one of the best in the states, even in sports, right? So what our kids have started accomplishing in academics, I think our kids will start accomplishing in sports in another couple of years. In other areas, see, if you send your child to Teola, I can promise you a very good college seat, right? Academics will be taken care of. But let's say you want your child to be a good singer. Let's say you want your child to be a national level dancer. Then you will need to supplement that education externally as well. We can provide platforms to perform, but at this point in time, despite how much I may like it, we are still not there in some areas. We'll work at it, right? We'll see how it goes, right? So I think academics, sports, behavior and value system, they're doing a good job. Extracurrics, co-currics, there is definitely some scope for improvement, and we're working at it.
So you've covered the extracurriculars, the curriculum. There's this term that we often hear, holistic development, or, all-rounder. So there's a very frequently term used in educational settings.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
And surprisingly, this term has been introduced in the last 10-15 years.
Right.
So the kids who were studying before 2005, probably they never knew what holistic development is all about. I'll tell you my personal beliefs, right? My personal beliefs are that, it's better to be master of one than to be jack of all trades, right? And I do believe that that thought does trickle down in our education system. We are living in an era of specialization, right? 25, 30 years back, when we used to go to a doctor, we used to go to a general doctor. Today, we go to a doctor, we have a gastroenterologist, we have an ENT specialist, we have a cardio specialist, we have an orthopedician, right? People are specializing. Generalization is not the norm at this point in time, right? And unless you are excellent in whatever you may choose to do, it'll be tough to serve. India is a very competitive place. And forget about India. The world is becoming a very competitive landscape. So, if holistic development means that a child is good at multiple things, right? I'm not against it. A child should be exposed to multiple things. Child should be exposed to sports, extracurricular activities, ability to speak, computers, academics, confidence, entrepreneurship, group task, everything. But the more important thing is the child needs to be excellent in at least one. I have seen multiple kids who were good or above average in many things, but were not excellent in anything. And they found it very difficult when they tried applying to good colleges. And I've found kids who were probably very unidimensional till the time they were in grade 12, but went to good colleges and turned out to be really, really good with, and evolved significantly over the next 4 to 5 years, right? So it is a tough call. But as I said, I think exposure to multiple things is a good to have. I think what's a bare necessity is excellence in at least one. I think for me, that's a far better development, right? As I said, master of one and, maybe better as compared to jack of all. Yeah.
So there's another term that along with this we hear, which is the happy child syndrome. So what do you have to say about that?
So these days what's happened is, and I'm a bit old, right? So I can probably comment on the young parents. And I've seen thousands and thousands of parents. See, parents, the young age parents, they do need to understand that it is not their responsibility to keep the child happy. Right? So if I'm a parent or I'm a teacher, my responsibility is not to make the child happy. My responsibility is to make sure that the child is safe, the child is secure, the child learns the right value system, the child grows into a responsible, independent, self-dependent adult. Are you understanding?
Right.
When you are too much concerned about the child's happiness, then you start compromising on multiple things, right? Then you're doing things not because they are right for the child. You're doing things because they're making the child happy, which is not which should not be the agenda, right? So as a teacher, I'm very clear. I'll try to do things which are right for the child. So we call this a happy child syndrome, right? And I encourage parents not to fall for the happy child syndrome. It's okay. See, we all grew up, right? No one really cared about us so much when we were growing up. And, we turned out just fine. And that generation just turned out fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't care about your children. You should. But overprotecting a child, caring about them too much, pandering to all their needs, right? Just making sure that they're happy all the time. That you're bringing up the child in a world which is not real. I remember an incident. We were interacting with a few kids of grade nursery, and there was this child who was sitting on a toy, and it was a bicycle kind of a thing, tricycle kind of a thing, and the child started moving on that tricycle, and he was moving towards the staircase. So one of the teachers who was standing there, she stopped the child very lovingly and said, "No, beta, please don't go there." And I remember that parent reaching out to that teacher and saying, "Please don't use the word no. We have never used the word no with our child." I'm not anyone to judge that parent. I'm sure, she has her own reasons. But to bring up the child in a world which is not real is not the right thing. Try to give the child some, prepare the child for the realistic world. He or she will ultimately need to survive and thrive in this world, right?
Right.
You can't isolate the child and, protect the child all the time. So, good concept, but, I'm uncomfortable with that concept.
Right. So at Teola, how do you provide mentorship? Teachers are just educators, they're mentors. So how does mentorship play a role at Teola High School, and how do teachers guide students in both their personal and academic journeys?
So most of the senior teachers that we have, play a very active role in mentorship, right? So we mentor students from a very early age, and senior teachers are trained to do so, right? So very early on, it'll be more behavioral mentoring, right? What is right, what is wrong, how to act, right? Good habits, not so good habits, right? Whether it's about food, whether it's about social media, computers, uh, how to talk, right? How to behave, how to dress up, etc., etc. As the kids start growing, right? The color of this mentorship changes. So then it could be about peer group. It could be about how to behave with parents, how to behave in social setting, and finally arriving at uh, academic and career mentorship, right? So just to give you an example, we are probably one of the very few schools in this country which actually conducts a very, very detailed uh, uh, career assessment kind of a examination, right? And provide extensive career counseling after that. And uh, we are always present for our students in any matter related to any career opportunity, field, etc. So, as I said, mentorship is very critical. But mentorship, the focus of mentorship keeps on changing as the child grows. It's on very different things when the child is very young. As the child grows, the focus of mentorship changes. But I think our senior teachers, our coordinators, our section heads are very well trained and exposed to this concept. And we work very closely with both the kids and the parents in making sure our kids are moving in the right direction. In fact, sometimes, we are a little too proactive. Uh, Sometimes we also make parents' life a little miserable, telling them what to do and what not to do. But yeah, that's a core part of a job.
So since you've spoken about the behavioral aspect, what about the academics? Like, so now there are students who are not preparing for competitive exams. What measure does Tiola High School take to provide career counseling and help them make informed decisions about their future?
See, at the end of the day, we believe that one of the key deliverables for a school is making sure that the child goes to a good college after grade 12. So even if a child is not preparing for any competitive examination, there are multiple other venues, right? You have CUET, you have local colleges, you have NIFT, etc. I mean, there are so many other things, right? So we understand. So we have a placement cell where I am a very, very important part of that cell. Plus, there are a couple of other people, senior teachers are there. We work with the parents. We sit down with the parents. We sit down with the child. We prioritize the list of colleges or list of courses they need to apply for. And we kind of mentor them, as we were just talking, to make sure how to reach that good college. Right. So even if they're not a part of the competitive courses that we run, we still work very, very closely with the child to make sure that the child ends up in either a good professional course or a good college.
So you're talking about counseling the students. How do you think you're providing that counseling? You know, there might be a student whom you think probably, I believe that I could be a doctor, but then, I feel while I'm studying as a school, you would be able to understand me better, or probably it's my inside feeling. How do you take, a call for a child, which stream should I
So
study?
there's one very, very important thing that people forget. A lot of people go to professional career counselors, right? Unfortunately, many of those career counselors don't really know the child. The good part about Tiola is that we really know our child, right? So we observe children, we create a timeline of children, right? So if you ask me about a child in grade 8 or 9, I'll probably know the child for the last 7, 8 years. And I would exactly know how the child has evolved, how the family is like, how the parents are like, right? What are his or her strengths and weaknesses, etc. So one, we know the child extremely well. Second, we have developed a proprietary career assessment tool, which we call TCAT. So we also let the child take that TCAT examination.
So you say that you conduct an exam in the school.
In the school, which is a
Right.
proprietary exam that we have built in-house, right? And thousands of kids have already taken that exam. And it's an AI-based tool, so it evolves the more the number of kids take the exam. And then there's another part, right? Which is what the child aspires to do, what the child is motivated to do. So knowing the child's extensive background, knowing the child's strengths and weaknesses, then we have a career assessment tool, right? We take inputs from that. And finally, we take inputs from what the parents and the child wishes to do. And then a thorough counseling is done and prioritizing is done for the child, right? And as I said, we have a placement cell which specializes in doing this only.
Right.
And it's a very, very, very complex process. And, a lot of effort goes there.
So not many schools that we've come across actually take responsibility for their kids.
In my knowledge, there are none.
Right.
Right? There could be some, but in my knowledge, there are none.
So in our discussion, you mentioned that there are certain qualities that you look for in a child. The child should be sincere, hardworking, probably, has seen struggles. Whereas the new age parents, say for my friends, they have kids. They don't want their kids to struggle. They don't want them to go through the same situations or the, scenario that they have been through. What's your take on that?
So let me blow my own trumpet a little bit. I'm good at observing people, right? One thing which I have picked up since my days at McKinsey is to find patterns. So I can observe things and then find patterns. What I've realized is that if a child doesn't go through that period of struggle, if a child doesn't go through that grind, if the child is not habitual of facing difficulties, then the moment the child grows up and faces the real world, the child wants to escape. He or she either doesn't want to confront or is looking for an easy way out, right? You have to understand one thing. Most of the people who are doing well have gone through that grind, right? And if we believe that just because we have gone through that grind, our child doesn't need to go through that grind, I think, it's not a good hypothesis. All individuals have different lives, right? As a parent, I can't live my child's life. And a child cannot live my life. A child will need to develop into a human being which is very individual to him or her. And unless a child goes through that grind, I don't believe that the child will be able to face the world, confidently and, like a winner.
So probably, I think the easy access to everything somewhere also stops the development. Are you saying like?
Absolutely. So just think about it. Let's say you protect the child. Every time, there's a Mercedes or a BMW, a great car around with the child sleeps in ACs, right? Everything. उसने जो मांगा आपने लाके दे दिया, right? कोई उसको एग्जाम नहीं करवा रहे, कोई डिफिकल्टी नहीं है, कोई ऑब्जेक्टिव नहीं है, हर काम करने के लिए उसके पास लोग हैं, right? The child sees this. And then suddenly, grade 10, you expect the child to change, to transform. You expect the child to suddenly start working very hard. You expect the child to become responsible. It doesn't happen like that. Human beings need to be trained, right? They go through a phase where habits need to be developed. And then, those kind of things can come to the fore when the need arises, right? If the child hasn't been trained for it, doesn't happen. I fundamentally believe, however successful a parent might be, the parent must ensure that the child goes through that grind, goes through that struggle, goes through that phase of hard work, sincerity, because that will definitely help the child do better. Think about it. If you remember 300, 400 years back, and for thousands of years before that, all the kings used to send their princes to an ashram. And in that ashram, those princes used to live like a common man and used to come back only after their education was over. And a prince would do exactly what a Brahmin son or some other son would do. Right?
Right.
There was a reason why this happened. So that those people, those princes, do not get a sense of entitlement. Right?
Right.
What happens is when a child is protected, the child, all needs are met, the child starts getting a sense of entitlement. And, that just kills the struggle in the child. That just, it's just very detrimental. Let me put it this way. It's very detrimental to the overall development of the child. So, you are into physical fitness. Tell me one thing. If for the next 2 years, you don't strain a muscle, you just relax, eat, sleep, enjoy your life. 2 years down the line, what's going to happen to your body?
Probably I might not be able to move. I mean, I'll just.
Right now, human body has this amazing ability that the more you push it, obviously you don't push it to the brink of breaking down, but the more you push it, the better it becomes. Right? So if you lift 20 kgs, your muscles will be much bigger. You lift 30, they'll be bigger. Are you understanding this?
Yes.
It's exactly the same with humans. The more you push them, the more you grind them, the more you let them struggle, the better they become. Right? The more you protect them, the more you save them for those days, the more you give them, rest and fun and comfort, the more they, not grow. I don't know. Yeah.
So it's a very.
Does it answer the question?
It does. It does.
So exposing the child to some vagaries in life, to some difficulties in life is a part of the developmental process. It's like, moving on from 5 kg dumbbells to 10 kg dumbbells to 10 kg.
Is it also the exams that we do?
Yeah. Same.
I mean, these days, a lot of schools, what we observe, are not conducting exams in school.
Yeah.
And when a child comes to grade 10, the child is struggling to appear for these
Exactly.
exams.
And competitive examinations, can't even imagine, right?
So how are we
So
doing?
the same child, when is sitting in the corporate and there's a board meeting tomorrow, will not be able to do well.
So are you saying that this is also very important? Are we having exams throughout?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Right? We have exams like a traditional school.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion. What message would you want to give to the parents?
So I just have a few pieces of advice. One, I do believe parenting is the most important thing, important responsibility that we have as adults in current time frame, and we ought to take it extremely seriously. Two, as parents, we are responsible for their safety, security, making sure they get good opportunities, and making sure they turn out to be good, responsible citizens and individuals. But it is not our responsibility to make sure they are happy, because happiness could depend on multiple things. Today, I do see a lot of parents being worried about their children all the time, being overprotective, catering to all their needs. Give them some space. It's okay. Sometimes it's okay if the child falls down. Sometimes it's okay if the child gets a little bit hurt. It's okay if the teacher has scolded the child a little bit. If it's okay, someone has teased him or her a little bit. This is how kids learn. Please remember, we had a great childhood. The previous generation, 80s, 90s, even early 2000, right? I think the parents were far calmer and, they did a great job with the kids. Whenever in doubt, just look back, talk to your own parents, take advice, how to bring your children up. Don't worry too much about very small issues, right? Focus on larger things. As I've said, the intention is not to make them happy all the time. Sometimes they will go through their own struggles, and sometimes it's important that they go through their own struggles. It's important to give them right habits. It's important to give them right qualities, right? So it's important that they're sincere. It's important they are humble. It's important they are hardworking, right? These are far, far more important things than many other things that we fret about these days. So that's about it. At Teola, we are always there to help both the parents and children. And, if your ward is a Teolarite, you can always come to me for, any advice, or if there's any help which I could offer, more than happy to do that. So thank you so much for listening to us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon.